Hello everyone, I'm Corion, your witch in residence here on YouTube. And it's Pride Month, and every Pride Month I promise to try to show you movies that are related to queer topics, but are approachable to everybody. And I think I've got a good list for this month. This episode is going to be about the movie Milk. Now, for those who are unaware, Harvey Milk was a queer politician in San Francisco and is probably one of the most responsible for the modern gay rights movement in the United States and really North America. It's arguable that it was his suggestions that led to the Stonewall riots, which is why we actually have a gay pride parade in North America and really around the world. Now, why do I bring this up right now, and why do I think this is important? Well, first, the movie is actually very good. It does a very tasteful and very wonderful job of exploring who the man was, what he was about, and what he was fighting for, which I think we can all agree is important stuff to understand, because we're seeing a lot of people push back against the concept of a pride parade this year and not understanding the reasoning why. And to be perfectly honest, in with the people that I've worked with throughout the queer community, a lot of them don't even know their own history of why why we do what we do. So I want to take the moment and talk about this movie because I feel like it's an important topic to discuss. See, one of the kind of unofficial truths about San Francisco and that whole area of California was it was very popular with the queer community before the queer community was public knowledge. And they really didn't have any representation. So it's important to understand why things laid out the way they did, why they felt they needed to have their voice heard, and why Milk was probably the one person that could be that balance point that was acceptable enough to the mainstream United States to move forward in such a way that they could be recognized and see things as not threatening or fighting. And really, you'll often see a meme running around that the first gay pride was a riot, and I would actually disagree. I would say it was a protest against what I would argue is a pretty discriminatory act. And this is important to keep in mind. It's important to be aware of, because I feel like you wouldn't ask for things like straight pride parades or other pride parades if you knew what the community had to go through to get to the point of the general acceptance that thankfully today it mostly has. And that struggle for acceptance is focused on this man's life. Between all the hoops and hurdles he had to go through in order to just get recognized, to get into politics, to running in the mayor's, in the race inside San Francisco to be able to be recognized. And then using that recognition as a politician to advocate for his fellow people. I think it's a struggle. I think it's a challenge that we can all relate to in some way, shape, or form. Why do I say that? Well, it's really simple. If you've had something you've been marginalized for, if you've had something that you've felt deserved to be allowed to be free but was not, and someone came along as a champion of that, who stood up in front of everyone and was willing to be that center of attention, be where all that hate was going to go in a lightning rod style fashion so that you could enjoy the freedoms you now have. This is a textbook example. This is a Prometheus-like figure, right? The fire he stole was the fire to be recognized as a fellow human being. And the way his downfall ultimately occurs is an interesting look into the future. I don't want to ruin the story for you, and I don't want to go too deep into a lot of the other pieces, but I will say that while I did not personally enjoy the musical score on this one, so if you're a person who really likes the music, you may not find this as appealing. I definitely enjoyed all the actors that they got for this. I felt they did a fantastic job, and absolute kudos go out to them. And I thought the story was absolutely compelling and very, very close to the original biography that this is based on. So I do encourage you to give it a watch. Even again, if, you know, being gay or being queer is not really your thing, this is an approachable movie still. Because it's a biopic. It's a pic about a human being who is struggling to fight for acceptance, to simply live their life. And I think we can all find parallels there. I think we can all find unity there. Today is Gerald Gardner's birthday. Gerald Gardner is the founder of modern British traditional witchcraft, which I'm a part of. And we're celebrating it today, getting together and celebrating the fact that we're allowed to be out of the broom closet, if you will. After, many, many, many years of laws being on the books saying that you were not allowed to be a witch. And as soon as those laws were repealed, somebody coming out with books on this is how you do it is worth celebrating. And so I identify with this character. I think it's a great story. I think it's one worth reviewing and understanding this particular hero's journey. And it's okay to not necessarily agree with his message, but to understand the pathos of a character going through this sort of scenario. And, as he himself would say, you don't have to accept what I do behind closed doors, but you do have to accept that I exist and I should be allowed to exist. And that, I think, is the most important message we can take away from that. So please consider giving it a try. I believe it is available on multiple streaming platforms at this time. It's also a fantastic ride for an excuse to go down to your local video store and pick up a copy. I promise you it'll be worth it. And it's definitely the kind of biopic you can sit and watch with your spouse and have fantastic discussions afterwards about. Me personally, it's one I tend to watch around this time of year to remind me of the struggles that people go through, how to be an approachable ally, how to be a useful friend, and how to mentor people in a constructive and careful way so that they grow up to recall those messages so that they're not, for lack of a better term, going to be jerks in the future. And I think that's something gay, straight, anywhere in between we can all agree on is an important piece. Some of the other movies that we're going to be discussing coming up is Kinsey, which is one of the first scientists to really do work in the modern era on sexuality and how it imparts on human beings. And these are all stories. These are important stories for us to understand because sometimes it's not just the destination, but the journey that got there that's super important to understand, right? I get the impetus to not necessarily want to go down to, say, for example, your local New York Pride Parade because it doesn't always feel family friendly, and I get that. But it's important to understand why it has to happen, right? It's important to understand why they now celebrate. Because, if you were oppressed, if you were in a situation where any party you wanted to have would be raided by the police, and you would be arrested for the crime of loving who you love, you can see why this would be important. And I think there's a lot of discussion that can actually be had about modern situations involving the queer community and where it's gotten to, and what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable from that community. I think there's absolutely conversations to be had. I think there's certainly a conversation to be had that separates the sexuality aspect from the gender aspect. And I would definitely welcome a polite discourse about it in the comments. I definitely think there is a discussion to have about what religion teaches us about, the nature of acceptable relationships. In my own faith, we teach that all acts of love are her rituals. Now, that doesn't put any direct decision on who you're loving, how you're loving, or how many, components are added into the bedroom of that. It just encourages us to love. And I think also you will find that many faiths believe that love should come first, and we can work out the details after that, right? I think even the current pope has said something to a similar effect, that love is such a rare and precious resource, and there is so little of it in the world. We should not condemn people for loving. And that, I think, is an important thing to keep in mind. And I think that is an important message to take away as well. And I think the movie does a far more eloquent job about it than I can, especially with the YouTube restrictions. I will say that the movie is roughly PG-13. I may not necessarily watch it with small children. I would probably say that this is more of a movie either for your older teenagers and up. And I definitely think it is a movie that you're going to want to leave time, if you're watching with somebody else, to discuss as well. I'm hoping for a lively discussion in the comments, because I think you guys absolutely deserve one on this one. And I'd like to know what you guys think as well. So please let me know what you think, and if you want me to continue on this kind of track, because I'd love to cover more deep, insightful, thoughtful movies, and I want to know if you guys are interested in that. So please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.